We'll gavel here, okay. We'll gavel in. Hello, Mike Ako. Before we get started here, some housekeeping announcements that we need to follow. Because the building is closed to the public during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, this briefing will be streamed online on the Senate YouTube channel that's available via the hearing notice. And a reminder to committee members in the room to speak into your mics, and for the presenters who are participating remotely, keep your mic on mute when you're not actively speaking. And please don't unmute your mic or speak until the chair calls on you. And then also to check your chat panel periodically. Okay, so let's get at it. Today's joint info briefing is being co-chaired by the Senate Ag and Environment and Water Land Committees and the House Energy and Environmental Protection, Agriculture, and Water and Land Committees. So this briefing will provide an update on the state's efforts to address threats posed by invasive species and to learn more about what challenges are expected amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, we're facing a very dire budget situation, but still, we don't want to let our guard down as it relates to invasive species. Otherwise, things can easily get out of hand, and things like little fire ants, coffee bearer borers, coffee leaf rust, rapid ohia death, and even new ones will wreak havoc on our environment and our quality of life. So we'll be getting an update from Dlnr, Department of Ag, and CTAR, and then we'll also have some time for Q&A after the speakers. So first, I'd like to introduce the AEN members. Who's here? Our new Senator, Laura Ocasio, and anyone else here from AEN? Senator Nishihara, Rhodes, and Favela. Okay, they might be tuning in later. So now I'll turn the mic over to the other co-chairs, starting with Water and Land Chair, Senator Inouye, if you'd like to introduce your members. Lorraine, are you?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I see Senator Revere from my committee. I think that's it. Did you mention Favela? Is he on? Because he's on my committee as well.
I did.
Senator Inouye, I'm here. Senator Misa Lucha.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Mahalo.
Okay, and then Rep. Hashem and Rep. Tarnas. I'd like to introduce your committees. Your committee members, are they here yet? Okay.
Go ahead if Rep. Hashem, no, Rep. Hashem, you're here. Please go ahead, sir. I'll go ahead.
Okay.
You're muted.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm here, right? As my vice chair is here, Amy Peruso, and I see Nicole Lowen as a member. She's also the chair, but Lisa Martin is, I think she is here. Scott Matayoshi, Chris Todd, James Tokioka, and Lauren Matsumoto is members of our committee. Next, I'll pass it to the Committee on Environmental.
Oh, thanks. Ag and Energy and Environmental Protection have the same members, so I will pass it on to the illustrious Chair of Water and Land.
Oh, thank you, Chair Lowen. My name is David Tarnas, Chair of Water and Land Committee. We have, let me just go through the members. They'll join us if they're not here already. They'll join us soon. Representative Vice Chair, Representative Branco, and we have Representative Ganadin, Representative Bert Kobayashi, Representative Sam Kong, Representative D. Morikawa, Representative Takashi Ono, and Representative Bob McDermott. Thank you all for joining us, and back to you, Chair Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so let's get started. Our plan is for this briefing to last about an hour. So we're going to start with, let's see, Josh Atwood. He'll be in charge. He's the Information and Education Coordinator for Dlnr Division of Forest and Wildlife. So Josh, turn it over to you.
Aloha. Thank you, Senator Gabbard. And I just wanted to thank the chairs for all the committees, Chair Gabbard, Chair Inouye, Chair Lowen, Chair Hashem, and Chair Tarnas, and all the members that joined today. I am Josh Atwood from Dlnr Division of Forestry and Wildlife, as Senator Gabbard said. I did want to, if it's okay with the chairs, to allow, we have the Deputy Director for Dlnr, and then I believe Dave Smith from Division of Forestry and Wildlife is here as well, just to make some introductory statements, and then we can get into the presentations, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
So
we're delighted on behalf of the Dlnr to be able to share our concerns on invasive species, both continuing as well as some of the new issues, and in this challenging time. So we're delighted with the leadership this year at the legislature, and since I'm a constituent of two of our chairs, I'm very, very happy. And that's it. No more endorsements.
okay, and I actually
can't contain my happiness.
I don't see Dave Smith on
Dave
the call.
should be on, otherwise we can just continue. Josh's point on this issue for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. So the first thing that I wanted to share with all the committees, when Rock was talking to me about the idea for this hearing, we were talking about how it'd be great to have a virtual field trip for you folks, because usually we do legislative outreach in the field, and this year obviously we're not doing that. So we have tried to prepare a video from a lot of our partners at the University of Hawaii Pacific Cooperative Studies Unit and Dlnr as well, that show you how some of the work is continuing under new guidelines for COVID. And we've never done this over Zoom before, so bear with me while I try to share a video through the Zoom system. Okay, I think everybody is hopefully seeing a black screen at this point.
Correct.
And we're gonna see if the audio works for this as well.
We just lost the audio.
All right, so hopefully you saw some of that. I've been getting texts in the background that the audio and video were both a little bit stuttery, but you know, we're doing what we can over Zoom these days. And I'm going to put the link to the video where we have it hosted on Vimeo. I'm going to send it to Rock here so that he can share it with all of you, or I guess to Cure.
That was good, Josh. Not quite as good as a site visit, but close.
We hope to have those back next year, but you know, in the meantime, you know, let me know if you want a custom-made video, because that's all we can offer. But hopefully that gives you a sense that even though it's been a very difficult year, the groups that work on invasive species in Hawaii are just incredibly dedicated, and the work hasn't stopped in any way. As soon as we got the word that it was considered essential, it's something that everyone's been really committed to continuing to make happen, because we don't want to lose progress on that. And so we'll get that original video link out to everyone, and then we'll be posting it on social media as well. And now I think we're going to transition a little bit into doing some more of the Dlnr DOFA presentations, unless there are any initial questions. And then I'm going to invite Chelsea Arnott, if it's okay with the chairs, to join me for just some introductory slides that are from kind of the Interagency Invasive Species Council perspective. And the HISC, of course, is administered at Dlnr Division of Forestry and Wildlife. So Chelsea's here. Chelsea, do you want to just give your name and title for everybody?
Yeah, aloha chairs, vice chairs, and committee members. I'm Chelsea Arnott, planner with Hawaii Invasive Species Council under the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Forestry and Wildlife. So thanks so much for organizing this, and thanks Josh for the introduction.
So I'm going to be sharing everybody's slides today, but we're gonna let everybody do their own talking. So Chelsea and I will co-present this first piece here. As soon as I find the right app. Okay, Chelsea, the first slide is yours.
Yeah, great. And then this just continues with what Josh was saying in the video. The work continues, and that continues with the Hawaii Interagency Biosecurity Plan that was released in 2017. And so the work for this plan and implementing the 147 actions still continues through the pandemic. We're now going on year 4 of implementation, and we're 65% of the way through in implementing those tasks. So you can see that on the pie chart at the top there. And so this is our shared path forward for the state in identifying those gaps and how to address the most pressing invasive species issues. I'll just real quickly highlight a few things that have happened over the past year that were addressed in the biosecurity plan. There was a restriction on all species of plants in the myrtle family into Hawaii put in through Hawaii Department of Agriculture. So this is a state restriction, and that protects ohia from additional pests and diseases that can be introduced on different myrtle species, especially our ohia plants. And also HDOA is hosting post-incident meetings for rapid response to LFA, especially, so that's little fire ant, especially here on Oahu. And then just a couple of things that are still in progress, discussions on a biocontrol facility with federal and state partners, looking at a new state-of-the-art facility for that. But jumping into things that are needed, we're still looking for funds for a Pacific Regional Biocontrol Center, and looking at capacity to co-manage vessel biofouling and ballast water discharge. We're still working on finalizing our progress report for this past 6 months. So when we have that published, we'll put it up on our HISC page, and anybody that's interested in that full report, we can send it to you.
Thanks, Chelsea. And I always try to just let the legislature know when we share those slides that we don't want to oversell it when we say that 30-something% are completed or ongoing. Most of those are ongoing tasks. And so, it takes a lot of time and consideration to move biosecurity plan actions from a stage where they're in progress to where they're really completed. So a lot of those are just ongoing perpetual things that we're working on and we need continued support for. So thank you. The next couple of slides we wanted to talk about, these might look familiar to you from previous years, so I'm going to be really brief with them. But especially in this year where we have an economic downturn, it bears repeating that biosecurity saves money. Investing in invasives is a very good investment because what the state spends on positions or operations for invasive species prevention, control, or outreach, it saves enormous amounts of money in potential impacts to the state from invasive species. So this figure here goes into a lot of the presentations we do, and it gives just some examples from a couple of species, some of which are here in Hawaii already, like Myconia, the second bar there. That's the estimated amount of damages each year by an estimate from UHERO at UH for groundwater recharge and lost bird habitat. Or the fourth bar there, little fire ants, Hawaii County only. That's from a 2013-2015 estimate of what the annual damages are under a reduced management scenario. So basically the little amount of money that we put in now, if that were to go away, that's what the annual impacts to several different sectors would be just for Hawaii County. And then there are two species up here that we don't yet have in Hawaii. One is red imported fire ant, and the other is brown tree snake. And you can see what the estimated damages are. Those are annual figures. The brown tree snake one is for, I believe, lost tourism, as well as medical incidents and damage to electrical infrastructure if snakes were to be, brown tree snakes were to be established in Hawaii. So those are just a handful of species, and you weigh those costs against what the biosecurity plan suggests for programmatic operating or personnel costs. And based on what the state was spending in fiscal year 14, I believe was the year that the Legislative Reference Bureau did their analysis, the additional amount beyond that the biosecurity plan says that we could be spending to do a really good job at prevention, control, et cetera, is about $38 million a year, which, we're talking about a biosecurity plan that looks at building capacity over time. And that's a difficult thing to talk about when the state budget is in peril. But we would just reiterate that when you invest $1 in invasive species work, we get more than $1 back and then some. So just another way to make this visual, this is a Photoshop mock-up from the coconut rhinoceros beetle response team at HDOA. We talk a lot about what the economic impacts are in dollar amount, but you think about the impact to kind of the feel of Hawaii if something like coconut rhinoceros beetle spread. This is Waikiki as it looks now, pre-COVID, of course, with people milling around outside. And then this is what it could look like if coconut rhinoceros beetle was really widespread. And this is, it's a little dramatic, but it's also realistic. There are places in Guam that look somewhat like this because they have really extensive coconut rhinoceros beetle infestation. And so one of the things that we wanted to talk about today before we get into more specific presentations is kind of looking back at what happened in the last economic downturn. So we've been in this situation before where the state economy is looking at some potential cuts rather than growth. And that's actually part of the reason the biosecurity plan exists. It was a plan about bringing back capacity after there was a reduction in force following the 2008 downturn. And it took sometimes in some of those cases, some of those programs still have not been built up to where they were before that reduction in force. So when the biosecurity plan was released in 2017, those are the figures you can see on the right side of the screen. The plant industry division was still down. I think in plant quarantine at HDOA, they might be back to where they were in terms of inspector positions in 2008. But you know, the amount of cargo and the amount of passengers coming through Hawaii has increased since then. And so we're hopefully looking at an era where we are increasing these position counts rather than decreasing them. And similarly, the biosecurity plan looks at the invasive species response for vectors of human health. So at Department of Health, in that reduction in force, we lost the entire vector control branch at DOH, or nearly the entire thing. And it took a massive outbreak of dengue fever on Hawaii Island, I think is probably the event that got that branch to come back online. While we can't say that the reduction of force caused any of the infestations that you see listed here in bullet point, it's very arguable that had we not lost some of those positions, maybe there would have been, you know, additional resources to deal with some of these things before we had really expensive response and control programs. And so during that reduction in force, that's when we see coconut rhinoceros beetle on Oahu, little fire ant on Oahu, and on now most of the main islands, a few other really notable insect invasions. It's a time of spreading for rapid ohia death, and then the dengue fever response as well. And my final slide here is just to point out that in the executive budget, we're looking at 17 positions potentially being removed just within the Dlnr Division of Forestry and Wildlife. Because this is the invasive species info briefing, I want to highlight that one of the positions that could potentially be lost is my old position, the invasive species coordinator at Dlnr DOFA that manages the Hawaii Invasive Species Council. I vacated that to move to a different position just before the hiring freeze. And so that position, we're looking to do a trade-off with operating funds so that the position isn't lost. And the same is true for the supervisor for that position, the Wildlife Management Program Specialist. They oversee the wildlife program statewide at Dlnr DOFA. And that position is not eliminated at this point, but it's unfunded. And so we want to try to do operating fund trade-offs to make sure that that position isn't lost. It takes a lot of time to restore a position after it's been cut. So we're hoping that by either keeping positions unfunded or by doing operating funds as a trade-off, we can potentially maintain that capacity or at least keep the positions unfunded on the books until such a time that we can fund them again. And then there's also a secretary position on Maui that is in the same situation. We're looking for operating fund trade-offs in the executive budget. That's it for me. I'll defer to the chairs, whether you want to do questions now or we'll transition into the next part of the Dlnr talks and hold questions for the end.
Let's, Josh, let's save the questions for the end, okay?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Hoff and Emma Ewan, and their slides are up now.
Thanks, Josh. So I'm Rob Hoff. I'm the State Protection Forester for Division of Forestry and Wildlife. I work on forest pest issues for the division. And one of the major projects that we've been working on has been rapid ohia death and the response to that disease. We've been very fortunate in previous years to receive specific appropriations from the legislature for rapid ohia death, totaling nearly $4 million. Last year, because of COVID, we were unable to receive that appropriation. So we had to turn to other sources to keep priorities going related to rapid ohia death. And we did apply for HISC funds and had multiple proposals funded for between $300,000 and $400,000, but also relied on federal and private funds. And some of those priority activities that we really needed to continue were surveying and responding to new outbreaks in areas where there haven't been detections before, keeping the diagnostics lab going so that we can continue to process samples, continuing research so we know how the disease is actually getting around the islands, and informing the public. Next slide. So I'm going to quickly go through just what the status is on the different islands for folks The Hawaii Island is where we originally detected it and where it's most widespread. This map is a little bit skewed toward access. This is where we've actually been on the ground and collected samples. But as you can see, it's fairly widespread through the island. There's some areas in Puvawa Forest Reserve and PTA where they still have not detected it, but it's pretty widespread. Next slide. Here on Oahu, we've only had 5 detections of Stratocystis huliohea, which is the less aggressive form. They've really ramped up sampling, still no leukohea. And I was going to mention that those 2 detections on windward side were residential plantings, people who had backyard ohia trees who reported the trees dying, and we were able to follow up with sampling. Next slide. On Kauai, there's been many more detections of both huliohea and leukohea, the aggressive form. Most concerning is that red dot on the west side of the island. That's a detection of leukohea that was just made last month in high quality native forest. And we're currently coming up with a plan to contain that detection as best as possible before it spreads into the high value native forest there. I also wanted to mention, since I didn't do a map of Maui Nui, we've actually only had 1 detection on Maui Island. It was an agriculture area and a planted tree, and it was destroyed. This was back in July 2019, and we've had no further detections on any of the islands on Maui Nui. Next slide. Our public outreach team remained very active despite COVID-19 conditions. They went virtual with a lot of the workshops and webinars to keep folks informed. They came up with new travel alert posters to go up in the airports as we gear up to have more travel in the state. And they also helped deploy signage and boot cleaning stations at trailheads with especially more locals going out and hiking this past year. We wanted to make sure people had what they need to make sure they're not spreading the disease. Next slide, Josh. But as you can see from that slide on Hawaii Island, it is widespread, and rapid ohia death is something that we're going to be living with for the foreseeable future. And we really need to come up with long-term management strategies for rapid ohia death. Genetic resistance is one thing we're looking into, but that's very long-term. Another thing that we're looking at, and Emma Ewan is going to present on this in more detail, but we're finding an interaction between feral animals and incidents of rapid ohia death on Hawaii Island. We also need more tools for invasive plant control. In many of these areas on Hawaii Island where the canopy has been completely decimated, it's invasive plants that are coming in to replace that ohia forest. We also need improved biosecurity capacity to prevent the next rapid ohia death from coming in. Next slide, Josh. So one of our best tools for managing invasive plants like strawberry guava, clidemia, and ginger is biological control. It's safe for the environment, and once it's released, there's very little you have to do. We've been working closely with Dlnr, or excuse me, HDOA, the Forest Service, and UH to increase our capacity for biological control. We've formed a biological control working group with these various agencies, and we're really focusing on the need for new facilities. And that's a pretty steep ask, especially in these economic times. But in order to really meet the demand we have for biological control, we are going to need new state-of-the-art facilities. And we've been working with our congressional delegation to see if we might get some federal support for this initiative. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Emma Ewan, to present the second half.
Aloha, I'm the Native Ecosystem Program Manager with Dlnr Division of Forestry and Wildlife. And here you can see on the left an aerial image showing what our raw team are surveying, the dead and dying trees in the canopy. And this surveys have really uncovered a very powerful new tool that can protect these large landscapes across many acres, and that's fencing and removing hoofed animals such as cattle, pigs, goats, and sheep, which create wounds in the trees by peeling off bark, or pigs dig at the roots of ohia, and then that creates the wound that is needed for the fungus to enter. Without a wound, these trees can withstand the fungus kind of blowing around in the air. And so that's the big ticket, or the big vector. Next slide. So this is really clearly shown in this image that was just actually gotten last month. And Dr. Ryan Peroy's lab with UH Hilo did an aerial survey of the 6,000 acre unit in Kahuku, where you can see on the left, there's fenced areas, and on the right, there's this long skinny piece of unfenced area. And the red and orange dots are the potential rapid ohia death brown and dying trees. And so the difference is really night and day. And this effect, as well as on the ground plot data, has been showing that fence that have these hoofed animals removed in them have much lower rates of disease than adjacent forests that are unfenced. And so the ability of ohia to regrow in these situations is also really affected by hoofed animals. There was a USGS study with Hawaii Cooperative Studies Unit at UH Hilo that recently came out showing that ohia that had hoofed animals removed and were fenced were 3 times more likely to survive than ones that were unfenced. And in fact, hoofed animal presence was actually a much bigger cause of mortality than rapid ohia death for these seedlings. So we've really long known how hoofed animals are really damaging for the forest in general, you know, trampling, eating plants, spreading weeds, and that sort of thing. But now the urgency to protect these forests is all that much greater. Next slide. The Dlnr in this upcoming biennium is requesting $4 million per year for fencing to protect 20,000 acres that you can see in yellow on this map. And the areas that we've completed and have protected since the watershed initiative began about a decade ago are shown in green. And then the ones that are currently funded and underway are in blue. And so we're halfway towards the goal to protect 30% of our watershed forests by 2030. And this additional CIP funding is really critical to have us stay on track to reach that goal. Next slide. So since we started, we have built 141 miles of fence in some of the most remote and difficult terrain imaginable. And we're currently constructing around 86 miles, and that $4 million a year ask for fiscal year 22 and 23 is a little reduced compared to the last couple of years due to budget constraints, but it will allow us to stay on track. And next slide. Wanted to also mention this CIP that we're requesting is absolutely essential for us to provide match for grants. In the past decade, the operating and CIP funds that we have put to Watershed Initiative has allowed us to raise $39 million in non-state grants. And that funding largely goes to directly to jobs for fence builders. In most islands, there are multiple construction crews like this one in East Maui that rely on watershed CIP funding. So we're really hoping that this additional $4 million a year in CIP money will be able to support both attracting more funding from federal grants as well as these crews that create local jobs. Next slide. So these forests are also really relied on by our native birds that are in this extinction crisis. And I just wanted to remind folks that we're doing a Birds Not Mosquitoes steering committee that is an interagency effort to give mosquitoes a Wolbachia bacteria that makes them unable to breed successfully. And this is called an incompatible insect technique. And so our steering committee is doing the technological and regulatory steps to allow those mosquitoes to be released. And we're getting federal funding to do surveys for research on where these mosquitoes exist and moving this project along. Next slide. So I just wanted to end on a hopeful note and show how fencing can really bring a forest back. This is in East Molokai, and before this area was fenced and hoofed animals were removed here in 2009. Next slide. So you can see that a lot of those grazed areas now in 2015 are slowly starting to come back. You can see little ohia seedlings just naturally coming up. These weren't planted, but without the hoofed animals, these forests really can regrow. And next slide. Now that same area in 2020. And so these newly fenced areas are absorbing carbon. They're actually really key to allow the state to meet our carbon neutrality goals. And they're replenishing our water, they're stopping erosion. And we really hope that these fences and these life-giving forests can continue with that watershed CIP request in the upcoming biennium. Thanks.
Okay, Josh, is that it? Did you have DAR, Brian Nielsen?
Yes, there should be someone from the Division of Aquatic Resources who's going to quickly go through the slides for the rest of Dlnr, and then we'll switch agencies.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, our biologist, Natalie Dunn, will be providing the presentation.
Thanks, Brian. This is Natalie Dunn. I'm an aquatic biologist with the Aquatic Invasive Species team at DAR. Next slide, please, Josh. So Hawaii's aquatic resources drive the tourism industry, generating about $1.2 billion a year. Additionally, Hawaii's nearshore coral reef fisheries are estimated to be worth about $13.3 million annually. Coral reefs also protect coastal environments from erosion and flooding and are estimated to protect about $835 million worth in building value each year. As a result of the island's geographic isolation, Hawaii has a high percentage of endemic species and unique ecosystems that are highly susceptible to invasive species. Next slide, please. So an aquatic invasive species is a non-native species that, if introduced to an ecosystem, may cause harm to Hawaii's economy, environment, human health, or public safety and welfare. There are estimated to be about 463 marine and 86 freshwater introduced aquatic species in Hawaii. Next slide, please. These are some examples of vectors of species introductions, with ballast water and biofouling being the top two. So ballast water is water that vessels uptake and discharge to maintain their stability, and biofouling refers to organisms that are attached to vessel hulls. Next slide, please. So the Aquatic Invasive Species Program works to control, manage, and prevent introduced species in marine and inland waters of Hawaii that are causing or could cause environmental, economic, or human health impacts. The team effectively transitioned to teleworking relatively quickly in the wake of the COVID pandemic. Some projects were delayed for a couple months, but we adapted protocols and were able to resume and keep projects on track. So just a couple highlights from 2020. Next slide, please, Josh. In Kaneohe Bay, smothering seaweed smothers corals and is one of the areas with the highest % coral cover on Oahu. The invasive algae control began with mechanical removal, followed by outplanting native sea urchins to graze down the algae. This year highlights the 10-year anniversary of the sea urchin hatchery, which has produced 600,000 urchins since the first outplant in 2011. This operation is the most successful marine biocontrol effort in Hawaii. The operation has been so successful that we expanded our efforts to control invasive algae in the Waikiki MLCD. The primary targets in this area are gorilla ogo and prickly seaweed. Next slide, please. Another highlight from 2020, there was a dry dock that had accumulated over 30 years of biofouling that was going to be brought to Hawaii from the mainland. We coordinated with the shipping company and advised them to clean the hull prior to their departure. They voluntarily cleaned the hull on the mainland and consented to a voluntary hull survey upon their arrival to Hawaii. The AIS team conducted an interagency hull inspection with NOAA and found that the majority of the survey area did appear to have been cleaned. However, there were a few pockets where live organisms were found, one of which is a known invasive species in Australia. The sea star you see at the bottom right of the screen is Asterias amurensis. So all live organisms were removed and sent to the Bishop Museum for taxonomic and genetic analysis. Next slide, please. We also responded to a report of suspected non-native corals observed by the Kawela Ohana, who has generational knowledge in the bay. We assessed the area and management options, and in July removed the invasive corals. This effort was collaborative, and many partners, including AEN-WTL-EEP-AGR-WAL, Waikiki Aquarium, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NOAA, HIMB, and the community were consulted, and some took part in the removal. Fortunately, the footprint was fairly manageable, and we removed the majority of the invasive corals in 2 days. So these efforts highlight the critical function of the AIS team's rapid response, kind of similar to what Josh was talking about at the beginning. Quickly responding to a report before a species spreads and proliferates reduces ecological harm, as well as long-term costly management efforts. Next slide, please. Another important highlight from 2020 is the Vessel Incidental Discharge Act. So I'm going to go over just a few main points here and what those mean for our team. So VITA will preempt states from regulating more stringent ballast water and biofouling rules, which are the top 2 sources of AIS introductions. Along with that, VITA will allow in-water cleaning of vessel hulls in state waters starting December 2022, which is currently restricted in Hawaii. VITA will allow states to enforce or co-enforce new U.S. Coast Guard regulations that will come into effect in December 2022. Last, VITA will prohibit states from charging shipping companies a fee to support this regulatory work, which means this will not be a source of revenue for Hawaii. Furthermore, this will be inconsistent across states. So for example, here in Hawaii, our program is 1 staff and 1 intern, whereas California has multiple teams and they charge a fee to support their work. Next slide, please. So to get some of Hawaii's invasive species concerns heard and addressed in collaboration with CGAPS, Dlnr participated in meetings before regulations were proposed and collaborated with West Coast states and other agencies. We submitted comments, participated in a multi-state letter, and supported governor's objection and assisted with the CZM consistency review. Moving forward, there are legal questions about several aspects of VITA and the new rules that will need to first be clarified or resolved. We will also need to assess and amend state regulations to enforce and co-enforce with the U.S. Coast Guard. We are suggesting a 2021 resolution calling on all relevant agencies and interested parties to work together to assess and come up with proposed legislation prior to the 2022 session. Last, as mentioned, moving forward, the restrictions on fees will pose a challenge with revenue to support vessel inspections and enforcement. Next slide, please. In addition to the revenue challenges with VITA, like many other programs, we're also dealing with the economic downturn associated with the COVID pandemic. We have 3 unfunded positions, and the civil service AIS team is currently running at about 57% capacity. However, our team has successfully transitioned to teleworking, as well as adapted field protocols that allow for safe operations. Next slide, please. Looking to 2021, moving forward with VITA, we plan to draft the resolution to work together to propose legislation and continue to engage in the rulemaking process. And we also plan to continue our work with AIS prevention, early detection, rapid response monitoring, and control. Next slide, please. For our legislative needs, I mentioned the resolution. We also ask for his continued support, which helps fund this program, as well as your continued support for the Division of Aquatic Resources. And last slide. For any questions, you can contact me or Brian Nielsen, the Division Administrator. And for further information, you can visit our website here. Thank you. Mahalo.
Okay, so is that it, Dlnr?
That's it for Dlnr, yes.
Thank you very much, folks. We'll turn it over to Department of Ag.
Aloha, Chair. This is Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser. While we're waiting for our slides to get set up, here we go. I'd like to introduce Darcy Oishi, Acting Plant Pest Control Branch Manager, who will do the presentation.
Hi, my name is Darcy Oishi. Thank you, Senator Gabbard, chairs, vice chairs, and members for this opportunity of talking about the impacts from coronavirus that the plant industry has had to adjust for in the COVID era. Next slide, please. I'll be talking about impacts on surveys, trainings, diagnostics, and responses that and highlight it with some actual real world adjustments that we've made. Next slide, Josh. For surveys, we've still managed to conduct them, but they've been slowed. We are limiting people, and we have rules on how we deploy people in vehicles. So, and all staff have to wear PPE. We've had limited staff to handle our surveys and responses. We had 2 federal positions that we were trying to fill, but were unable to get filled before the shutdowns occurred. And as such, we have no dedicated survey team anymore. And at times it's been difficult to assist the neighbor islands. Here is pictures of our orchid fleck virus response. Orchid fleck virus is one of the most damaging citrus pests in the world. And it was found impacting trees in Waiakea on the Big Island. And we had to, normally we would deploy staff from Oahu, but this occurred in that critical March, April time period when travel was suspended. So our local staff worked with University of Hawaii. Thank you, Dean Comerford, to eradicate the infestation on premises. Next slide. We've had to adapt our training. Normally when we have a new pest incursion, we deploy our most relevant staff to whatever island, train people whoever we need to, and get things going. Since COVID, we have switched to virtual training. So we developed keys and guides to facilitate the training of our staff. One of the side benefits is we've been able to provide much more support, not just for our staff, but for our partners in getting the message out, what to look for, how to look for things. And so there's been some positives that are takeaways, but what we do have is a lag sometimes in responsiveness. We're having to dedicate time from my specialists to develop these training aids to support the statewide needs for training. And this is an example of our coffee leaf rust guide for and how to determine coffee leaf rust over coffee leaf spot. Next slide, please. We've had some delays in diagnostics. This normally is how we used to operate. We would have field crews from Oahu going out to neighbor islands to assist on-island staff. And then as they would be coming back, they'd be bringing back the key diagnostic samples. We've partnered with Plant Quarantine and other partner agencies in order to facilitate getting samples. Some of our diagnostics is actually done with support from University of Hawaii, USDA ARS, and a variety of other agencies in order to help streamline our process. But we do see some delays in getting samples routed, and parts of that is not just a capacity issue with staff, but impacts for transportation and our ready ability to move material quickly because of broken supply chains and movement chains. Next slide. We've had limited response capabilities also. After COVID-19, we did limit services to the public because of our offices are being closed to the public, so we don't receive samples being walked in. Again, as when we lost our federally funded staffing capabilities for pest detection and response, we basically had all of the phone calls is coming to one individual who then makes sure that calls go to the right people. And with people working from home, we get a lot of calls over issues like avocado lace bug, and there's a lot of email and phone traffic, and we've been responding in kind by email and phones, but because of our limited capacity, this has been impacted. And our final slide. So COVID highlighted some of our needs, which is we need more specialists and survey units, especially in order to improve our responses and our ability to address the needs of the public and industry. Over the past few years, we've been seeing our staff get more limited, especially on the other islands. And that's become problematic here on for some of our islands. But we made some positive adjustments, and one of the big positives has been reinforcing our internal and external working relationships. So a perfect example is we enhanced our relationship with Pulama Lanai in order to ensure we could get surveys done. They actually sent us samples after getting a quick crash course on how to package COVID, rust-infested samples, how to actually recognize it. They've done an excellent job, and they're after that quick training, maybe they can join the Department of Ag as employees down the line. Sorry, I wanted to speed things up so we could get back on track. So that's all from us.
Thank you very much. And next we have Dean Nick Comerford from CTAR. Dean?
Thank you, Senator, and hello to you, Senator. Hello to the committee chairs and all the committee members. I'd just like to talk from this one slide to give you an idea of where we stand in CTAR, the difficulty we've had because of COVID, but also how we're trying to compensate and try to keep the work going forward. So I've got two columns here. One is our positions that were related to biosecurity that were swept in the last session. And then the other one is since March, any kind of position that resulted in a retirement, a resignation, or a new hire has been frozen and continues to be frozen. So on the left column, we were in the process of hiring an IPM specialist for Hawaii County. We had one there years ago and it was never refilled. This was an opportunity for us to enhance our biosecurity operation on that island. A mycologist retired and we were in the process of rehiring that mycologist. In both those positions, we have faculty on campus who have training in mycology in their background and have tried to pick up some of the additional work that comes along with those specific areas. We did have 11 agricultural technicians statewide at our research and extension centers that were swept. It's not as bad as it might look. About half of those positions had been open positions for years, and sweeping them really didn't make a difference because we never had the funding to fill those positions. However, about another half of them were positions that through retirements and at least one resignation, we were in the process of refilling those at the time. How that relates to biosecurity is that with our ag technicians, these are the folks that are often in the field doing a lot of the work, taking a lot of the samples, helping the faculty with their research, and supporting the extension programs. We also lost on Oahu our pesticide education position. This is related to our IR4 program. For those of you not familiar with IR4, this is federal funding that we can get, where it is testing the efficacy of different pesticides, as well as defining the data that's needed to put a different pesticide on a label for a particular crop. Our IR4 program, though, does continue with one of the faculty in one of our departments. And right now, given the coffee leaf rust problem, their focus is on testing different pesticides in conjunction with trying to control leaf rust. On the other column, these are our frozen positions. Like I said, they're either retirements, a lot of retirements. The college was a little bit long in the tooth, and most of these were planned retirements, although some I think were retirements that came about because it was becoming difficult to get the work done and they were at retirement age. Also new positions that had been retired in the past and were redefined, trying to enhance our biosecurity approach in the state. The first is the urban landscape management position. Obviously, this has a lot to do with integrated pest management, both in urban areas and in nurseries. Another one was controlled environment agriculture. Although I think this position was returned. I believe last year it was removed, but then through the grace of the legislature, I believe it was returned. This is an incredibly important position for the future, we believe. In each case, that then went to an evaluation of the potential problem and, if necessary, some level of control. That position is just a hard one for us to take. So what we've done is we've tried to scrape some money together in the college. We've got somebody on a part-time basis for a short time who's at least trying to keep up with samples that come in so we can maintain some semblance of activity and help for the farmers on the Big Island. We were in the process of hiring an aquaculture specialist. One of the aspects of this job was also to look at biosecurity and diseases and that in aquaculture environments. This was a shared position with the Sea Grant program, and we were each going to take it halfway. And that was one things we've been trying to do is share positions outside the college to get more efficiency with the funding that we do have. And the last position that is currently frozen is turf grass management specialist due to a retirement last month. And this position, like the urban landscape management position, does have a role in the use of pesticides, the recommendation of pesticides. It was a specialist position, so it is extension, and was really helpful in helping our clientele decide what the problem was and then integrate pest management approach to address it. So, Senator, that's the short form. We're doing the best we can to keep things going by the faculty stepping up, and I can tell you I'm incredibly proud with all the people throughout the college and how they've reacted to the pandemic and the response that they've given. 100%, 120%.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, I think if you can stick around, folks, for, I'm having some internet problems, but if you can still hear me, we'll have some Q&A for maybe 15 minutes. I'll start it off. Can everybody hear me? Because I've lost.
We can hear you, Mike.
We can, good. Okay. So I have a question. I'll start off the questions with for either of the three agencies, and that is that we're almost halfway through the timeline for the 2017-2027 biosecurity plan. And I just wanted to get an idea of what your priorities are going forward. Maybe from Dlnr, from Department of Ag. Respond.
If nobody else from Dlnr wants to take that, I'm happy to. With
Good, Josh. Thank you.
Bob's approval. I would say that our priorities moving forward, recognizing that the economy is going to be a major talking point for the next few years, is maintaining what capacity we have in operating funds and positions. And then our departmental work under the biosecurity plan, a lot of it was around capacity building. And so adding new like invasive species technician positions at Division of Forestry and Wildlife, converting the ballast water and biofouling program at Division of Aquatic Resources to civil service and adding positions there. I hope that's still possible with the years remaining in the biosecurity plan. There are a number of small policy changes that could be made without necessarily requiring funds. And so we can look at those as ways to make progress through either statutes or administrative rules. But I think my experience working with all the agencies on the biosecurity plan is that the work really comes down to people and the resources. And so I think that's probably our priority moving forward.
Okay.
I want to mention that we recently had some stimulus funding that came in from the CARES Act that provided a lot of opportunities for short-term hires. And in the past, environment has been a really key way to get people back employed. So that's another big opportunity that potential future stimulus funding could provide, in addition to, the watershed CIP and other existing jobs that we have provided.
Anyone else want to weigh in on the biosecurity plan?
Yes, Senator Gabbard, Bob Masuda.
Hey, Bob.
Just to share with you that from a management perspective, we're looking at how we can cover and not eliminate functions. And so, for example, both Strawberry Guava and Ohia Rod have two teams working on stuff. So what we're exploring, Rob and Bill Starman and others are exploring to see how we can combine the work of, since a lot of this are in our native Hawaiian forest, how we can combine work around both of these areas. And just to leave some of our newer legislators with a thought, when you look at those ball-head coconut trees that Josh showed you, it's dramatic. But another thing that's dramatic that people don't think about is our basic, most important priority is saving the quality of our water and our watersheds that Hawaii has. And this is directly related to our forest protection, our fencing to protect our watersheds. But think about strawberry guava, just strawberry guava, not the rapido here. That strawberry guava during normal times evapotranspirates 27% more water than a native Hawaiian forest. Okay, 27%. But in times of drought, the studies by Tom Jambaluka and other hydrologists have shown that strawberry guava evapotranspirates up to 54% more water during times of drought than a native Hawaiian forest. When you think about that, it's very dramatic in terms of what we have. And two of our most precious blessings in Hawaii, and I'll leave you with this thought, is the quality of our air and the quality of our water. Two basic blessings that we have. And so, we're taking a look at how we can deal with stuff. And it's a challenge, and we're not coming to cry, but to share information and work together with you in a consultative way. So there are areas that are totally new, like inviting others and visitors to share in the cost of protecting and restoring with different fees. So we're coming up with some proposals, and we'll be looking forward to sharing with each of your committees in a time when we have more opportunity for discussion. Just wanted to share those thoughts with you, and thank you all, because we look forward to this session being one in which consultation is very actively conducted. Thank you.
Chair Gabbard, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Bennett.
Yeah, so I noticed that particularly for Rapid Ohia, community outreach was an integral part of your plan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, COVID, it's difficult, obviously. So have you pivoted to any kind of outreach, or have you completely stopped?
No, one of the nice things about working with in Dlnr is, we have a lot of experienced old timers, but we have a lot of very bright, very inspired young people. And so they're a lot more up on technology. And so working together, I think we've made a shift to use of technology, as you've seen Josh, as an example, do a virtual field trip. Well, we look forward to taking some of you who haven't been on our field trip in the field, on field trips when we can do that. In the meanwhile, we've done a lot of outreach virtually. Right now, Josh and Emma and I have a team of bright young people working out of different silos like aquatic resources, forestry, wildlife, etc. And we're coming up with some good brainstorms to develop presentations, telework, kind of teleeducation, and working with some of our friends at the Department of Education, where they're doing more telework, for example, telestudy. We're trying to create field trips and science education programs for students. So we're making the shift very comfortably, and I'll work together with Department of Ag and Nick and CTAR folks, are all very collaborative. So I think that's been very helpful. But thanks for asking. Technology is something that is helping us in this challenging time.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? Questions?
I have a few questions, I see some hands raised also.
Yeah.
So maybe Senator Inouye, why don't you go first, and then I'll go and see if some of the House members have questions.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. And this more comment and questions to either Emma or Robert, with regards to the rod, but there's another invasive tree that has been pretty prevalent over the years, and that's the fire tree up at Volcano. And it's rather interesting because what we had with the lava air, the VOG, it seems like it didn't kill the fire trees.
No.
Interesting though, that, and why I concerned and know about the fire trees, because we have a home up at the Volcano Golf Course. And we've been cutting back, we've cleaned our property, and so we don't have any of the fire trees, but our neighbors do. But looking at recently when I went up there, and I haven't gone there for quite some time, and I was rather surprised that where the golf course is and the surrounding communities, which is in their backyards, it took over the ohia trees already.
Yeah.
I couldn't even see some of the ohia at all where ohia dominated Volcano. So I was wondering, and maybe Nicholas if he's still on from CTAR, if I remember years ago, there was research on the fire trees, and I thought at one time, I went to a release of, I think it was the moth years ago. I was wondering if we just abandoned that problem. or if it's an issue at all, Emma, regarding fire trees other than the volcano community, if it's anywhere else. And I was just wondering if it also had something to do with the rod landscape, but don't know. Maybe it's not, because I've seen the rod through the volcano area up until Ka'u by helicopter. But I haven't seen the fire trees yet, but I don't know, because, you know, it's so dense now up there.
Em?
And Emma, if you can.
I want to ask Rob to talk about whether there's any biocontrol work done, but I do know that it is also a big problem on Hawai'i, and it's a really good example of the two-pronged problem with rapid ohia death, because you have these trees dying, and what comes up after it is these invasive species, primarily in the lower elevations. When you have a high elevation native forest that doesn't have these other invasive weeds, a lot of times natives come back. And so that's a more healthy system that is, and in many cases, ohia seedlings are coming back. But these other weeds are the big problem with rapid ohia death. Do you want to elaborate, Rob?
Yeah, so
Go ahead, Rob.
Your memory is on spot there. There was a release several decades ago to control fire tree, and I'm not quite sure the status of whether it did not establish in Hawaii or whether it just has marginal impact. It is an example of invasive species that's widespread that we're going to need additional biological control to manage effectively in the future. I don't know if anybody from Department of Ag remembers that release and what the outcome of it was, but I believe it never established.
Did Emma say that it's on Kauai as well? Emma, was it Kauai you said it was noticed?
Yeah, fire tree is over there also.
Okay.
Senator, I don't know exactly what the college has been involved in the past or currently, but I'll get back to you on what is current and what kind of information we have from the past as well.
So the biological control within CTAR and Dlnr, I mean, are we lost with your biological control or management, Bob, in Dlnr?
What I'm going to do is check with both Forest Service entomologists and see what's going on there. We've worked with Tetrococcus ovatus for the strawberry guava and have released in certain areas, so it's in process. But it took us 12 years to finally get, the approval to release that a few years ago. So that's in process. The other thing in process in regards to ohia is that the Forest Service is doing some extensive research in trying to come up with discovering or coming up with disease-resistant ohia. So we're putting in a lot of joint work together on that. And that's one of the areas. So as Senator Bernadette mentioned earlier, are we, with the change, with all these challenges, are we giving up our hands and throwing up our hands? No, quite the contrary. It's inspiring us to look at various ways. We're training, we have Dr. Kealoha Kini with the Forest Service is training some dogs that we brought in to sniff out rod. And so that's another progress we're doing for discovery and checking stuff. But there are lots of things going on, more than we can tell you all about in this very short meeting. And we look forward to more extensive stuff. What I really want to look forward to, Lorraine.
We get a chance for some House members to ask a few questions.
Oh, yep. Sorry.
Thanks. And I have a few questions, but you know what? I'll follow up offline and defer to people who have questions now. And maybe we can try to keep questions and answers concise. So If anyone has a question, raise their hand. I guess I see Rep Peruso has her hand up.
Thanks. I do have a question. So my question has to do with what I see as an intensifying conflict over ranch lands or lands that are adjacent to existing ranch lands, and who is going to take responsibility or be in charge of these lands. And I know that there's been an ongoing conversation between the Department of Agriculture and Dlnr, and I watched the last hearing, and I am hopeful that we can have a meaningful consensus develop. But given these concerns about rapid ohia death and the impact of hoofed animals, for me, it just heightens the urgency of protecting our existing forests. And I'm wondering if someone from Department of Agriculture could speak to your level of preparedness in protecting those forests if those lands do indeed all come under your purview.
This is Phyllis Shimobukuro Geyser, Chairperson, Department of Ag. Thank you, Representative Peruso, for that question. The Act 90 transfer requires mutual agreement between both boards, Board of Land and Natural Resources and the Department of Agriculture. The pastoral lands that are currently with Dlnr are under discussion between both our departments to see what we mutually agree upon for transfer. That being said, we continue to work on the transfer issue. Yes, feral ungulates are devastating to the forests and the watershed. But I believe that over the past decades, the ranchers in Hawaii are very good stewards, and they pride themselves on being good conservationists too. So with that, we continue to work together and meet and try to come to a mutual consensus on what we are transferring over through Act 90.
I think what I would add to that, Representative Peruso, is that when it comes to dealing with things like ROD and transfer and all that, both ag and its quarantine people in particular, as well as the Fed agencies, Department of Ag, and Forest Service, etc., we pull together as one team. So we may differ on some issues, but when it comes to dealing with the enemy invasives, we are a single team, and we work together.
Thank you, Bob. Rep. Martin, you had a question.
I did. Earlier, Josh had mentioned that there was areas for making progress with small statutory changes that don't cost money, and I just wanted to make sure that he had shared those needs with somebody who could introduce them.
Thanks. Not this year, I haven't reached out specifically, but I'm referring to items that are in the biosecurity plan. So every year we send updates on kind of what items have and have not been worked on. And so there's a list of policy ideas in there that could be worked on in any given year. Some of them are things that do need some progress to be made first. And so, for example, there are a number of policy changes around ballast water and biofouling that are recommended. But as the landscape changes with VITA, I think it's more of an ongoing dialogue with experts at Aquatic Resources than it is just looking at what's in the biosecurity plan. But we do try to communicate those on a regular basis back to the legislature.
Thanks, Josh. Any other questions from the House?
Looks like Rep. Bronco has his hand raised.
And then Chair Hashem also.
My question was concerning our native birds, and I just wanted to see what was the status of the introduction of the Wolbachia mosquito, and seeing what we can do on behalf of our native bird species.
Yeah, either Josh or M should take that.
Josh, do you want to go?
Sure. So the status is that there is a working group formed. It's now called Birds Not Mosquitoes, and they're basically looking at what are the technical and the regulatory needs to make that happen. So I can put you in touch with the folks that are coordinating that working group to get more specific updates. I don't have off the top of my head kind of the current regulatory status, but I know that they are in the process of working on multiple lines of research around the bacteria and trying to get it into mosquitoes collected here in Hawaii. And there's also different researchers looking at other tools as well, but they haven't yet identified like a site for doing a trial with the bacterial infused mosquitoes or infected mosquitoes. So
Yeah,
that's still a work in
Representative Bronco, as far as recently as 2 weeks ago, Chair Case and I met with the new regional director for Fish and Wildlife Service. And we have been discussing how we can up the advancement on Wolbachia research and use for helping to save our endangered native Hawaiian birds.
Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, Department of Ag, like to add to that Chair Case, myself, and key leadership did meet with Department of Health also last year, and we have been working together to assist Department of Land and Natural Resources and Forestry and Wildlife to address any permit requirements for importation of any needed sources of biocontrol to address the problem of the endemic endangered birds.
Okay, what we'll do is just alternate between the Senate and the House. Any Senate members have any questions? Okay, any House members? Okay.
I think Rep. Hashem has his question.
Okay.
For DLNR, what are you guys doing about the Molokai access deer, the overpopulation? What is your plans going forward?
Rob, you want to take that? Are you familiar? We have any wildlife guys on?
I think David Smith might take that one.
Yeah, Dave's on the call.
Oh, Dave's on the call. Okay, good. Dave would be the best. Dave?
Yep. Yeah, we got a multi-agency task force over there working on that. We're working with the private landowners. We're coordinating with the county and DOT, trying to assist them. Most of the problem is not actually on state land or land controlled by Dlnr. It's mostly private land and roads, either county roads or state highways. But we're working with the different agencies to try to bring the resources, make sure we got the resources in the island. What we're doing is going out and collecting animals. So we're trying to relieve people of health issues like animals dying on their property and whatnot. We're trying to collect those animals, take them out to private property, we're digging trenches and burying them. So that's all in cooperation with both the agencies and the private landowners. And it's not just a deer thing. There's because my thing at first was like, well, let's throw some food out there. Let's open up some more water sources, but it's not that easy. The situation is such that even cattle are dying. So there's a widespread issue with ungulates on the landscape and just not enough food or water resources. And so we're taking a close look at, how we can try to relieve it immediately, but we're talking about right now, maybe going out and doing some culling to bring the animals down. There's a lot of animals that are basically staggering around out there, very weak, in a bad condition, most likely to die. So we're working on a multi-agency effort to see if we can't get out there and do some culling, just to bring those animal populations down to where the current status of the landscape can sustain them. Going forward, again, a lot of this is a private land issue. We don't have any seasons or bag limits on deer. You can take them anytime you want, as long as you have a hunting license. And so there isn't much we can do more in terms of making hunting more liberal. But we probably need to look at maybe bringing some more opportunities to private lands to and developing a population estimate that we think, a plan to try to keep them within a certain population so that they don't, the numbers don't skyrocket and get into a situation like we have now. A lot of it's exacerbated by drought over there and whatnot. And most of this is on the west side of the island, which is, as you know, very dry.
Senator Ocasio had a question.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. It's very informative. I was wondering, is there anything active being done on the Hawaii Island with the imminent threat of the Queensland longhorn beetle attacking the fruit trees?
So I can say briefly, this is Josh Howard from DLNR, that through the Interagency Hawaii Invasive Species Council, we're funding a research project that looks at trapping potential for the beetle, because that's one of the initial gaps, is that they can't work with the beetle until they have a good method for trapping it. But as far as control or impacts to agriculture, I'd have to defer to the Department of Ag staff for that.
Darcy Oishi, would you like to respond?
Sure. Darcy Oishi, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Along the lines for lure development and a trap, recently the USDA through Plant Protection Act 7721 awarded some funding to the Otis Laboratory in Massachusetts, which we are partnering with to help develop a lure and other trapping mechanisms. As far as control, the Queensland longhorn beetle and other large invasive boring beetles really represent difficulties with control. There's no pesticide applications are always problematic, primarily because what happens is when they bore into the wood, they're actually disrupting the movement of pesticides. So getting the kind of pesticides dosage needed to actually do control is very difficult. So the only real way to control something like the Queensland longhorn beetle is to destroy the infected plant. And until new techniques and technologies are developed, it's basically the only real solution to addressing that issue.
Chair Lowen, you had some questions?
Chair Gabbard, may I suggest, since we've gone so far over our intended timeline, might be efficient for each of us to ask our members if they have questions to send it to their respective chairs, and then we can follow up with the agency representatives so that we can handle that, because there's way more questions than we have time for, as you can
That's
see.
fine. Yeah, good idea, David. Okay, but Chair Lowen, did you want to ask?
Can I squeeze in a couple questions? I guess you guys can tell me if you would rather answer them now or send a response, but 2 questions. I know Emma mentioned the Conservation Corps funding that came through the CARES Act funding, and I would just be interested to hear more specifically about how that, how many jobs that was for like DOFA or the ISCs, and how that interacted with state agencies directly, if it was useful, if it would be more helpful if it was longer term funding instead of just the 3 months. That was question number 1. And question number 2 is about the Hawaii Ant Lab and whether that's in any risk of losing funding, if it's in a okay position, and especially for the office that we opened on the Kona side, which I know has been really busy and really helpful to the West Hawaii residents. Is that, what's the situation of that because of COVID?
Yeah, thank you so much to you folks at the Ledge who provided that CARES Act funding. And it was very helpful. I will follow up with you on the actual numbers and where they all went, but definitely the longer these folks are able to be employed, it's so much more efficient and helpful to us. So, you know, it takes a while to just train us up or train these jobs up, and would be much better if we could get much longer term staff that can really know the land and know what we're doing. So thank you.
Really briefly.
Chair Lowen, may I just add that besides longer term on the CARES funding thing, one of the casualties that we'd love to have you guys consider on all of this cutback is our Youth Conservation Corps at DOFA. This was a very painful situation, but unless there is a way in which we can salvage, that's one of our most significant young people's opportunity. I hate to lose it, but that's one of the casualties of our cuts.
And Chair Lehman, just briefly for your question about the Ant Lab, they receive funding in part from HISC and in part from Department of Ag directly. And I think talking to the manager, it sounds like both of those funding sources are likely to decrease this year. And so I think they are in a bit of a precarious position funding wise. I believe they have enough to make it through the calendar year for personnel, but it doesn't really leave much for operation expenses. That's the last thing I heard from the manager. And I also heard that they've had a difficult time trying to get the funds released for that Kona position just because of the way it's housed within the university structure.
Representative Lowen, for the Department of Agriculture, we have been approached by Hawaii Ant Lab for funding for 2 proposals, and we believe that with maybe a minor decrease, we are able to fund those 2 proposals that are for statewide core support, and we'll be able to do that with our special funds. As long as we have our special funds, I think we can, address invasive species issues and support that. In addition to filling some of our positions that are vacant through special funds for meeting some of our biosecurity plan goals.
Is it Nicholas from CTAR? I'm not sure if he could answer that question, but I know the bill that we passed for the position in Kona, that was inadvertently, I think, put through Hilo maybe instead of Manoa, where the funding normally comes from for Hawaii Ant Lab. I don't know if it were or the opposite. Josh is nodding like that sounds right, but apparently they're having some issue getting those funds released, and that is frustrating because that was very specifically, that bill was very specifically written to specify that that was for funding the West Hawaii position for the Hawaii Ant Lab. So not sure if anyone on this call has any influence on that or can explain that to me, but I'd be curious to know the answer.
Looks like Dean Comerford's gone, so I'll make sure that he gets back to you. So we're at an hour and a half. Thank you very much for everybody for participating, colleagues, and also from Dlnr, Department of Ag, and CTAR. Thank you for all you guys do. So
thank you very much, both you, all the chairs, the 4 chairs. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Okay, aloha everyone.
Okay, aloha.
Mahalo.
Mahalo, aloha.